Rolando C. Gonzalez. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ariana Rodriguez, and I am the youngest of Rolando's 5 children. On behalf of my siblings and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you all for being with us today. I know that Dad is here with us right now, and he's just gushing over everyone gathered together for him, joining together to celebrate his life. And I knew when I decided to do this that it would be one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. But I made a promise to Daddy that I'd get through it, so bear with me, and we will. And in the end, we will dance again. Our father, Rolando Colchado Gonzalez, was born August 7, 1954, in Cotula, Texas, to parents Lázaro III and Leonor Gonzalez. He was the second oldest of 12 children and the father of 2 boys and 3 girls. He also leaves behind 21 grandchildren, 10 great-grandchildren, and numerous nieces and nephews, as well as his partner, Laura G. Cuellar, his canine companion, Bo, and several family and friends. Dad led such a big, fulfilling life, it's hard to know where to begin. He was a hard-working man till the day that he died, just like his father before him. He spent many years working as a plumber, but nothing beat his love of working on a ranch. He loved the country life and everything that went with it. The great outdoors, the horses, the smell of the morning air, and the beautiful sunsets. But the most important things in life to him were always family and his beloved dog Bo. Dad always made it a priority to make time for everyone in his family and to never lose touch with his children, grandchildren, brothers and sisters, tias, tios, and even cousins. Whether it was a phone call or a visit, or at a party or at a barbecue, smoking chicken or briskets, Dad was always there. He even hosted poker games with his nephew Tommy and other friends. Those nights excited him. He'd light up talking about them the next day, and he was always present. Whenever he was with you, you knew he wanted to be there. He wasn't distracted with his cell phone or social media. He made you feel wanted. He loved visiting Albuquerque, New Mexico to hit the casinos with his brother Corey, and he could shoot the breeze for hours at a time with his brothers Mario and Lázaro, cracking jokes and constantly picking on each other. He also enjoyed watching Sunday night football with his brother Mauro, and just hanging out talking about life and baseball. And until his heart troubles prevented him, he looked forward to the Wild Hog Cook-Off in Cotula, Texas every year, where he'd spend time with his sisters Roxanne and Sinaida. And he was his brother Rick's biggest fan back in his bull riding days. Dad absolutely loved to watch bull riding, whether it was on TV or in person. He also loved to cook, and he was damn good at it. Anyone that tried it, I'm sure, is going to miss his delicious pollo guisado or his plate-sized flour tortillas and his bacon grease refried beans. He loved to cook for others. He'd randomly pop into Taco Cabana, where his sister Leona works, just to see her and sometimes bring her lunch. He used to occasionally spend mornings having breakfast with his sister Mari and just sit and talk for hours. He could carry on a conversation with anybody, family, friends, and even strangers. A real people person. In recent years, he was reunited with the love of his life and high school sweetheart, Laura. They first met 53 years ago at the age of 14 and 16, when Laura and Dad's late sister Esma, who were best friends, would meet for school in the mornings at Wela's house. They had an instant connection, and the 3 of them were inseparable. As friendship became love, he would pick her up from work every day and give her a ride home. They would spend Friday nights at the football games, always sitting in their special spot. They would go to the movies and dance the night aways in the clubs. Dad was a pretty good dancer too. And they would often spend their weekends at the historic Playland amusement park. Dad even rode the roller coaster once upon a time. After a few years, conflicts would send them their separate ways. Both went on to marry and create families of their own. Years later, him divorced and her widowed, they reconnected and in June 2020 began dating again. They quickly and easily rekindled their love for each other, and the rest is history. Lara, I've never seen Dad happier than these past 3 years. He was absolutely smitten, and I am so grateful that in his last moments, he was exactly where he wanted to be. And I know that he was infinitely loved by you and your family. Thank you for loving my daddy and taking care of him from the bottom of my heart. But anyone that knew my dad knew how much he adored his grandchildren and great-grandchildren. They were his pride and joy. From the oldest to the youngest, he shared a special connection with each and every single one of them. They knew that his love for them was unconditional and wholehearted. He had the wisdom of long experience and the love of an understanding heart. And I want them to know that just because he's gone from this physical world doesn't mean his love for you went with him. He is the morning dew that kisses your cheeks, the bird flying by your window and flashing his wings, the butterfly fluttering by when you feel hopeless, and the warm breeze that hugs you as it blows by. So to quote an Eskimo proverb, perhaps they are not stars in the sky, but rather openings where our loved ones shine down to let us know they are happy. And remember, your grandpa will always love you. And then there are his children, Henry, Adriana, Laura, Orlando, and myself, who he loved more than anything in the world. Dad always found time for his children. He made it a priority to visit and stay close to each of us. He enjoyed driving to Dallas every so often to visit Henry and his kids. They'd occasionally play poker and even went to the casinos together. Dad really liked gambling, in person, at the casinos, or even on the computer. They competed with each other's cooking and went back and forth over whose cooking was better, from menudo to brisket. Whenever he was home in San Antonio, every now and then he would have breakfast, lunch, and dinner dates with Adriana and sometimes Mike. He'd visit her at work and they'd have Chinese food from Lee's Kitchen. Dad loved their lemon chicken. Sometimes he'd stop by for nothing at all but to visit and talk, and she could always depend on him to be right there by her side to cheer on her girls at a holiday performance, band competition, or award ceremony. When he was with Laura, she was always feeding him. He loved her chiles rellenos and pineapple upside down cake. One year for his birthday, she made 30 chiles rellenos for him and anyone that showed up at Wela's house that day. And he couldn't wait for tamales season. Sometimes he'd make special requests for tamales throughout the year. It could be the middle of summer and he would want tamales, and she would make them for him. Whenever he wasn't feeling well, he looked forward to her caldo de pollo and being spoon-fed like a baby when he was incapable of feeding himself. And he always depended on Laura for anything medical. She'd schedule doctor's appointments, refill his medications, and even stayed with him whenever he was in the hospital. Laura always took care of Dad. With Orlando, Dad knew he could always count on him to lend a helping hand. He was always Dad's plumbing assistant and helped him with several different jobs. When they weren't working together, they loved to go fishing. Orlando would visit Dad at the ranch in Big Wells and they'd be up all night making memories. They enjoyed barbecuing together. Dad even helped Orlando's boss with the rodeo cook-off after his boss had just had open heart surgery. He was always willing to help someone in need, even a stranger. And then there's me, Ariana, his youngest, his princess, his pudgy, his baby girl. I know my dad wasn't perfect, but he was perfect to me. But it doesn't matter who my father was. It matters who I remember he was. And maybe he wasn't always there when we wanted him to be, but he was always there when we needed him to be. He was my hero and my protector. Some of my earliest memories are of when I'd have nightmares as a child and tiptoe to my daddy. He'd let me lay with him till I fell back to sleep. Mom always hated it, but Dad just made me feel safe. And then there was the time I'd just gotten my driver's license and got lost by the airport. I called my dad and told him where I was. Not 15 minutes later, he showed up to get me and I followed him home. And he was a strong survivor too. He once had a tire blow up in his face while adding air. Thankfully, he only suffered a concussion and a broken arm. One time, while he was out buying cigarettes, he was taken hostage at gunpoint during a robbery. Luckily, the gunman let Dad go and Dad was able to identify the guy. Years later, he was in a bad car accident and his truck was totaled, but he miraculously survived. He had open heart surgery and multiple stents placed multiple times. Dad even beat COVID. He was a fighter, till his heart just couldn't fight anymore. And I'm going to miss absolutely everything about him. He was an old soul who loved classic television. I remember watching TV with him as a child. It was always the same shows: The Andy Griffith Show, Leave It to Beaver, Sanford and Son, Happy Days, The Rifleman, and Gunsmoke. I'm gonna miss those midday phone calls asking what I'm doing and what I've eaten. Every time we talked on the phone, if he was at home, he was watching one of those shows. I'll never forget those surprise morning visits to walk with me and the kids to school. Walking out the door and seeing him waiting for us at the gates. And I don't know if many of you know this, but Dad was quite an artist. He could draw pretty much anything. He once drew my daughter a horse in a little notebook she had years ago. It was about 3 inches big, but so detailed. And back when I graduated high school, Dad sketched a portrait of me for my senior photos. I still have it framed and I will cherish it forever. But the thing I'm going to miss the most about my dad is the sincere joy he felt in the success and happiness of his children. He was genuinely happy anytime we tell him about something we were doing or an upcoming trip. He was always asking when our next trip is or when I'm going to another Cowboys game. Now I can't stand being in a crowd. Dad, there's an emptiness in my soul and I find myself searching the crowds for your face. I know it's impossible, but I can't help myself. I'm lost, and in the days that follow, I discover that anger is easier to handle than grief. And I know that there will come a day when I can speak about you and it will bring a smile to my face instead of tears to my eyes. Until then, I'm taking it day by day, doing the best I possibly can. So Dad, now that your knees don't hurt and your heart's strong, meet me in the kitchen every morning, 6:45 a.m. sharp, so we can dance our song while I lovingly cook breakfast for the grandchildren you adore. And for one last time, good night, Daddy. I love you. Love you.